Hey friends, and welcome to my review of Gears Tactics reviewed on PC. This is also my first video of 2021, so that's pretty hype. So I'm going to start off with a explanation of the format. It's going to be a little different than normal. It'll also be a little bit longer than normal, but I'm adding a new section at the end. So I'm going to start off with the question of the day, my score out of 10, time to complete, and then we'll jump into a gameplay summary, my likes and dislikes, and then at the end I will also be adding some recommendations that I would like to see in future games. So my question of the day is, would you be interested in videos from me that are reaction videos and other types of content to supplement the game reviews? With school starting again, I won't realistically be able to do a 30-hour game every week, so I'm hoping to still be able to get content out to you guys, but I'm just kind of curious what kind of stuff you're actually interested in. Alright, so we're going to jump into the actual review now. So I'm going to start off with my score as always. I gave this a 7 out of 10. Although I will admit I actually did strongly consider giving it a lower grade, which will kind of be explained as I go through the video. My time to complete was about 24.5 hours, but it can be completed a lot quicker. I had to restart missions because of failing optional quests. I was trying to get all the legendaries and stuff, although I did kind of rush towards the end because I kind of got bored or frustrated, whatever word you want to use. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with gameplay style. So this game has a lot of similarities to the XCOM series, but since not everyone has experience with that, I will use a more general description. So on each mission, you deploy and move up to 4 units across the board while trying to collect loot and complete one or several objectives. Your units can only make a set number of moves each turn, and the same goes for the enemy units. These moves include moving, shooting, reloading, using abilities, and are based on the class of each unit. Shot accuracy is also important because its accuracy is based on percentage, which will change based off what gun you're using, what character you're using, range, gear, cover, and class abilities. But due to the variety of classes, I will not go into depth on this. But you can expect things like support, snipers, heavies, kind of standard Gears of War ideas. Some missions also include modifiers that can add positive or negative consequences. In addition to the on-board gameplay, there's also a team management aspect to the game. So as you progress, you'll have access to new characters that you can recruit and deploy on both main and side missions. I'm not going to get too into this as it is somewhat basic, but I will get into it a little bit in likes and dislikes. Alright, so I will start off with my likes. So one thing I really liked is that the characters are actually more interesting than I expected. And if the missions were actually based around character history and like kind of learning more about the character, I would have enjoyed that a lot, especially yeah, for the side missions, which we'll be discussing in great depth. The game is prettier than I expected. The cutscenes are actually comparable to Gears 5, and even when you drop the quality to make it easier to stream and stuff, it still looks pretty good. And it also runs pretty well overall. I liked how the classes can have different passives and build paths, and you also get a decent amount of reset tokens if you feel the need to change it up. Your build, maybe you were building one heavy type, and then you decide you want to do something later because it's more optimal for what you're running into. But in the early game, these differences aren't as noticeable because the characters are all pretty basic for the first third of the game, I'd say. The enemy designs were true to the main Gears games, and the continuity was nice. It was nice to know, I see a person with a torque bow, I can already kind of figure out what's happening, although it does explain what it is, in case you are new to the series. I also like the length of the normal missions. They're about 15 to 25 minutes, which is a good length, I think, for a standard mission. But not all missions are created equal. There's a variety of missions. There's rescue, control, collection, destruction. But I did find I began to dread certain missions as I didn't find them as fun as the others. And the boss fights potentially dragged on much longer than these 25 minutes and could become stale depending on, how you interact with them. There's another interesting idea of being able to recruit units, but I didn't think it was as impactful as I would have liked. You can only do certain things with them, and so it's like, okay, I have 10 extra people, but what can I really do with them if I'm not using them on side missions? I like the benchmark system as well. So it actually gives you the chance to run your settings and see how the game performs. This was really nice, especially since I streamed the game as well. It just made it nice to know how it was actually performing. And finally, one thing I really did like was figuring out combos that characters could run to get extra moves and stuff. But you need luck, and so even if you have a pretty high hit percent, if you're unlucky, you probably will just have to restart, which sucks. Which leads me into my dislikes. Okay, so there's quite a few. Like I said, I did consider giving this game lower, but you know, it was just kind of personal experience, and maybe people had different experiences. So I kind of tried to round it out and be like, use a non-biased game design perspective. So my dislikes, my biggest complaint about this game was the side missions. They're called side missions, but you're required to do at least a certain number of them, and that did not transfer well for me. I did not like that. Don't call it side missions. They're required. These missions felt like they were just kind of there to increase playtime. Most of the missions didn't even relate to the main story, and they're just about getting more resources or optional characters. Some of the modifiers could even make these missions less enjoyable because they made them more difficult, and you really kind of had to, you know, figure out the best way to do it. They could be pretty restrictive and could cost you a side mission. So if I was trying to grind legendaries on side missions, I would have to restart a lot because things, you know, just got unlucky or whatever. And the loot drops honestly didn't feel worth the time in a lot of cases. Some of the legendaries were pretty good, but I felt a lot of the time, especially towards the end, I was just kind of like, whatever. The user interface also had some issues on PC at least. Maybe it's better on console. But if you're up close to terrain or inside buildings, it can be hard to see where windows are. So like it can be hard to throw grenades and such. And you kind of found I had to move my mouse around a lot to actually get an optimal landing point to try to hit as many targets, which could be a little bit annoying, especially with it sticking to other locations. There's also no undo button. So if you're trying to do something and you accidentally click, you're just kind of there, which is unfortunate. There's also issues selecting items if they're too close, and it wastes some move even if it's right at your feet, which I thought was kind of odd. I'm sure they had their reasons for it, but yeah. And there's no benefit to deleting loot or characters even if you're not using them. The only benefit is potentially making it more organized for your eyes, but many of the screens look messy. You can customize your characters, but I felt it was lacking. Sometimes you had to go 4 screens deep to make a minor change, and it just wasn't optimal. Another theme in this game was a lack of information. So when you start a mission, you don't know that much. Like, it gives you a general description of what you're going to be doing, but you don't actually know until you're in there. And sometimes your classes could be totally wrong, your builds could be totally wrong, and you'd either have to restart the mission or grind it. And it could really be tedious. So I would have appreciated some more information. Same with Fog of War. It's an interesting idea, like not knowing where things are, but it definitely needed to be tweaked. There's times where it feels like the enemy can see you, but you can't see them, and it's like kind of like, what is the point of field of vision if it doesn't apply to both sides? It's hard to play, like it's also really hard to play a game around tactics with so much information missing. Like I said, I had to restart or adjust my builds, and it broke up the flow. It just didn't feel fluid. It didn't feel great. Continuity kind of got ruined. It ruined my immersion. You also can't move your camera while the enemies spawn or move. So if you move your camera somewhere, sometimes you'll just miss what they actually did. And this can be pretty impactful. AI vision, like I said, can also be one-sided. And it's not always clear why this is. Like, they'll chase targets even if they don't have a line of sight. And I'm sure there's a reason for this. There just isn't clarity around it. And I found that really frustrating. It's like, why am I getting chased, but I can't see them, you know? Kind of made it hard to plan. So I think some improved clarity would have been nice on that. Not necessarily like that's an issue, just clarity could be lacking. My other really big complaint theme about this game is there's too much RNG. So there's RNG spawn locations, so where the enemies spawn on turns for missions can change. And that can be a good or bad thing. You can get a good or a bad, you know, location for where you're set up, but it can make it hard to plan for. Random loot doesn't tell you the class or slot it's for, and it doesn't actually feel that rewarding, as I said earlier. So I stopped getting excited about loot and like kind of ignored things that were out of my way because I just didn't feel like I was getting it. And, you know, I felt like a lot of the time I got something, it was for something I didn't use. Replaying a mission to get a legendary, like I said, I was trying to get all the legendaries, but then you get a legendary that doesn't match your playstyle or the character classes you're even running, and this, you know, it just doesn't feel rewarding. It doesn't feel good. And this could have been easily avoided with some, you know, increased clarity again. I think clarity is one thing that this game definitely can evolve on in a sequel. And then my final complaint about RNG is that it doesn't actually match how the characters are portrayed. So they're supposed to be trained soldiers, but based on percentages, you're missing an RNG shot from a foot away. It just doesn't make sense. It breaks the immersion again. And yes, I know the accuracy can't be perfect, but I feel like they could have chosen better values or maybe a smoother system to kind of account for this. But yeah, um, now we'll kind of go into my recommendations, at least ones that I think are pretty obvious or like important. So first, drop the side missions. There are too many, they get boring too fast. If you want to include side missions, that's fine, but make them optional and tie them more to the story. Going out on supply runs 20 times gets old, especially if the loot isn't good. Give a crafting option, so disassembling loot into components to make stuff you want. So again, this helps with the RNG. If you don't get what you want, give them the option to change it. You know, it also increases the clarity and organization. Character loadout could also benefit from a better UI. So auto sorting, build recommendations based on class could remove some of the grind. And simple things like, you know, automatically giving the option to equip an item you pick up that is just a better version of something you already have equipped. It would just be nice. And finally, I would like to see a little bit more optimization around the extra characters. So like instead of side missions, send side characters out on side missions that are off screen with either a known or unknown rewards with loot or characters. This makes the selected characters unavailable for a certain number of missions. But then when they come back, you just get the rewards, and then you could throw in a potential fail rate depending on character level, stuff like that. It could also offset my suggestion of removing side missions, and would just make better use of the unused additional characters. So my final thoughts: this game has a lot of potential, but I was confused and frustrated by some of the game design decisions. Obviously, like I said, this review is a lot longer than my normal ones, just because there is a lot going on, and I think there's potential room for growth and change. But with all that being said, I hope they make a sequel and make use of some of these changes because the base of the game is actually really good. As for this game in particular, it can be enjoyed, especially if you are a fan of the genre or just Gears of War. Just make sure your expectations are realistic, especially if you're on Game Pass. It's definitely worth trying, but I wouldn't buy it at full price. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, I apologize it ran a little long, but please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out if you guys like the content. Let me know if you guys agree with what I said, disagree. Make sure you ring the bell to be uploaded when new content is uploaded. I do plan on uploading a lot more in 2021 than in 2020. Finally, a big shout out to all of you who have been supporting and commenting on the videos. The community is growing and I love it. I hope you all had a good New Year's and hopefully see you in the next video. Peace.